So this is our Network Master Pro series of transport multifunction testers. The Network Master Pro was designed as a multifunction tester in that you can have field installable options. Field installable options can support everything from traditional 1.5 meg T1s riding over Ethernet all the way up to 10 gig Ethernet and other transport test services. We have a second module here that features an OTDR. Additional modules are going to be available to do other functions in the world of transport. In addition to traditional transport, we also have the functionality to be able to test the physical passive link of the CPRI, or Common Public Radio Interface, which is where the fiber is communicating information from a base station up to a remote radio head in such a way that the information gets transferred from fiber to electrical to RF. This is what we call CPRI. And we need the ability to be able to test the capacity of this CPRI plant from the ground all the way up the remote radio head without necessarily having to climb up a tower. We've tried to design the MT1000 series in such a way that it's very intuitive. If I'm doing an OTDR test, I can test the physical integrity of the fiber and tower here. If I'm doing a CPRI test, I simply press on the icon for the type of test that I want to perform. The Network Master series is actually two completely independent test instruments in one for transport. So I can select the transport channel 1 for a CPRI test, and while this is loading and set up, I can also select the second port to actually test the backhaul that's feeding from the base station back to the central office over Ethernet. The test I'm going to show today is the ability to run a CPRI test and verify that the SFP, the small form factor package up at the top of the tower, matches the same SFP that's down on the ground. Oftentimes, a very simple error to encounter is that I have the wrong type of SFP, or small form factor package, not matching the one in the remote radio head up at the top of the tower. A simple way to test for that is I can check the transceiver. By pressing transceiver, a one-button test, I can tell if the transceiver is functioning properly. I see its power level transmit, I match it to its receive level power. I can see that the wavelength is correct, and I can test that and match the wavelength of the SFP up at the top of the tower. If I want to see more information about that transceiver, I go down and I look at the compliance. And here I can see if the range of the transceiver is correct. Because transceivers look identical, and oftentimes base station manufacturers remove the naming and the nomenclature or specification label, if that is obscured, you don't have a way of seeing what the transceiver is, so we need to match it by performing a test. We don't want to perform that test by climbing up on the tower top. So with the Network Master Pro, I can test the transceiver at the base station by plugging it into the tester, or I can loop a fiber up the base station and test the transceiver that's up at the remote radio head. This is a very quick way for me to see, is the compliance, the transmit and receive speed adequate? Is it match the transceiver on the ground? Is the length of the transceiver, its power level, correct? Does it match the one that's on the ground? If I see a pattern of errors, I have an opportunity to tell quickly if there's something that may be statistically similar with different types of SFPs. So in this case, I can see the manufacturer of the SFP, the part number, the revision, its serial number, and the production date. This gives me a very rare opportunity from the ground to see if I have a bunch of failures that may have been manufactured at the same date or time, allowing me to more quickly go back to my manufacturer of the base station or the SFP and rectify the situation to see if it's correctly functioning properly. This test takes a matter of a few seconds once you've set it up for the tower top and the base station. The second test that you'll want to do is you'll want to go in and you'll actually want to run a test at the rate of that particular SFP test. And I'll run that test by simply pressing a play button. I can look at the test results, see if the test results are in line or in specification. In this case, I'm looking to see if there are errors. And what I'm going to do here is inject an error to see if by injecting an error on the ground, my tower top SFP is functioning properly. So I simply inject an error. And if the lights go yellow, in this case I've set it so that if I inject more than one error, I show that there's a warning. What this tells me is I'm properly communicating with the SFP on the top of the tower. If this did not go yellow, I know right away that I either have a problem in my fiber or I have a problem with my SFP. Before I send up a tower climber, I'll switch fibers and I'll go into the OTDR. I'll press one button to change to OTDR and run the test of the health of each fiber in the SFP, transmit and receive side. If those test good, I know there's a problem in the SFP. I can also further stress the SFP by introducing more errors to see if I can actually force it to fail. And if I introduce enough errors, I force a failure, and that failure would allow me to actually be able to see in the test what actually failed. And I can come in by simply going through individual buttons and look at the health of the actual SFP at the tower top. If something failed, I'll see where it failed. I'll know if the failure is because of something on the ground, if the failure is in the fiber, or if I have to deploy a crew on the tower top. So the idea behind the Network Master Pro is to be able to quickly, with very powerful tools, functionally test the tower without having to climb, but only climb when I know that I have a problem at the top of the tower.